Okay, so I'm going to go over a few things as it relates to clutches, flywheels, and clutch collars today. I get a lot of questions about which clutch to use, what is the flywheel I have, how do you tell the difference, which collar to use. So I'm getting ready to ship some of these parts out to my customer, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to make a quick video just to explain briefly what a lot of these parts are, the differences between them, and maybe that'll help answer some of these questions on these Datsun clutches. All right, so let's start here at the end. The transmission forks, there's two versions. You either have the one with the hole in it or the one without. This is the most common one. This is the Series 1 that has the adjustable rod along with the spring that connects to your slave cylinder, which is hard to get those anymore that still have the accommodations for the slave, but you can easily modify that. Next, I get a lot of questions on the transmission rods themselves. The one on the right is a spring-loaded one out of a ZX. The one on the left is obviously a non-spring-loaded one. That spring is inside there. That makes it a little bit more comfortable to shift. They both work the same. They both do the same thing. The ZX is just a little bit easier to get in and out of the gears. Flywheels. So there's two versions of flywheels. I have two exact flywheels here, but for the sake of this demonstration and video, I'll just explain to you briefly what the differences are. So you either have a 240 millimeter flywheel or a 225 millimeter flywheel. This is our modified flywheels that, as you can see, start off pretty heavy, 23.5 pounds. This particular one we took off almost 5 pounds to get it down to nearly 19. And this other one was a little bit more bulky, started at 22.85. But we were able to get 6 pounds off. The casting, the manufacturing times, why they're different, I don't know. You can tell that this one has a little different groove here. They're the same exact flywheels as far as functionality, though they're both interchangeable. How you tell the difference between a 240 millimeter and a 225 is a 240 will have a 240, the bigger one of the two, will have 9 of these pressure plate mounting holes, and then the 225 will have only 6. Another way to tell is they're just physically different sizes, right? You can tell, at least I can, the one on the left is the bigger of the two, which comes out of the turbo and the 2+2 models, and then you got the smaller one, the 225. I'll show you kind of how that relates to the gear, or excuse me, to the ring on this flywheel. So you can see this one is right along the circumference of that particular ring on that flywheel. That's the 225. That's the smaller of the two. The next one, 240, is obviously bigger. You can no longer see that ring. It is designed for the higher horsepower turbo cars and the heavier 2+2s. Nissan apparently thought they needed to accommodate for that with bigger clutches. Now, I am a fan when you replace clutches to go with the bigger one. It's obviously better and has a larger gripping surface on the clutch disc itself onto your flywheel. However, there is a caveat to that, and that's what I'm going to explain next, which is where the biggest questions come. And it's these three guys right here. These are the transmission fork collars for your throwout bearing. Now, the most important part is to notice the 3 different sizes. The one in the middle is really the oddball out. I've heard a variety of different stories of where they come from. Some people say it's a 260, some people say it's out of the trucks. For the sake of this video, let's eliminate this one altogether and call it the long one and the short one. That's usually what you'll see on most write-ups or references that you see online. The tall one, the longer one, is for the 225 millimeter, which is the most common. The shorter one is for the 2+2 or the turbo one. And why are they 2 different lengths? Well, I'll explain that. And they're not interchangeable. Even though they will work, they will not reach and engage your clutch properly if you have the wrong one in. So it's vital that you know which one you have, the longer or the shorter. I'm going to grab my calipers here in a minute and I'll measure the differences between the two. But obviously it's pretty significant. And why is that? Well, look at the pressure plates now. right? We can obviously see on the turbo model, the prongs on the pressure plate protrude past that lip, that white lip there. And then on the non-turbo, or the most common one, they don't. And again, if you interchange those two, it's just not going to work. Or if you put the long one, which is that one, and you're using this clutch, it's going to crush those forks and ultimately crush your clutch disc. I got another kind of example here of what that looks like. That's a collar with an old bearing on it, and then, you know, obviously your fork pushes down here, which is engages and disengages your clutch. One thing too I wanted to note is, for some reason, some of these have a smooth casting. The vast majority have this rough casting, as you can see. I don't know why. Maybe this one's aftermarket. Maybe it was a later model. Who knows what Nissan was thinking over the years, but that is the most common. I see that on probably 90% of the transmissions, unless of course it's been tampered with, which is what I wanted to explain. Is a lot of times these transmissions have been interchanged over the years, and the clutches have been interchanged over the years. So people will say, well, hey, I've got a 1975, but it's got this bigger clutch in it, which is, again, you know, not uncommon. So you really got to be careful, especially if you're not the original owner. A lot of these parts have been interchanged and you know, put the wrong parts in the wrong car over the years. One thing that's important to note is the transmission does not matter. Whatever clutch you have is what collar you need to have. The transmission has no bearing on that at all. These forks are interchangeable. The slave cylinders are interchangeable. The bearings are all the same. Although there's, you know, different versions of the bearings that look slightly different. Whenever you're doing a clutch job, obviously make sure you replace your pilot bushing. That's $5 worth of cheap insurance, as well as that bearing. Most clutch kits now come with these things standard. This is that clutch alignment tool. And then the last thing I wanted to clarify is the speedometer cogs. There is a difference in the wide ratio versus the close ratio. The wide ratio has the steel black cog, and the close ratio, and this is a bad example because this one is a speed sensor, but it's the same idea, will be aluminum. The body is aluminum. Obviously there's 3 different colors. That represents the 3 different gears, which are for different applications depending on your rear end, to make sure your speedometer is correct. Same theory is, a lot of folks have changed these out over the years. This comes out, you pop out that little pin you can see there, and then these gears are interchangeable. But if you're having a speedometer problem, as far as the accuracy, usually that's the culprit, because somebody's either changed out the rear end or the transmission or the speedometer cog. But I hope that helps. Again, you know, notice the difference between a 2+2 or turbo and a stock Z-car pressure plate. I use this Clutch Masters brand product. It's worked great for me. It's easy on the leg. They make these awesome Kevlar disc base clutch disc. I've run them in my street cars, in my race cars, and customers' cars for years. I've never had any complaints. You know, how often do you want to do a clutch? And when you do, you want to make sure that you get a good one. Spend the money and not have to replace a clutch every year. So again, I hope that helps, and that's the end of this video. Thanks for watching.